At first I wondered what exactly I'd have to say about Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging. Yeah, I mean, first off, even before this, I'd say if you think the idea of Nickelodeon doing a documentary is weird, how about a British teen comedy? And for the record, yeah, I think Nickelodeon themselves had no idea what in the world they were going to do with this movie because, well, when they made it, they ended up not releasing it in theaters in America, only in Britain, and where else I don't have in my head right now. But then at the same time, they also, I think the reason for doing so is not only because they weren't sure how to market it, they didn't know who to market it to, whether it'd be a success, and they were probably afraid of it because of how risque it is. Which, yeah, this movie, their first PG-13 rated film, and you can absolutely see why, and understand why. But that all said, do I actually like it? Yeah, it's actually really good. Here's the plot. Georgia Nicholson, played by Georgia Groome. The first name is also the same as it is in real life. That makes it pretty easy to remember. Is a 14-year-old girl about to turn 15 and desperately wanting to have an impressive birthday party. She's constantly badgering her parents to book a club so that they can to have it there. Not to mention because she's out trying to also outdo her rival Lindsay, played by Kimberly Nixon, who is sure to have a much bigger shindig. But at the same time, her parents, her pleas to be treated more maturely, constantly fall on deaf ears with their parents. However, while she's trying to figure out how to do that, she discovers that she, along with her best friends, one of them named Jazz, played by Eleanor Tomlinson, discover that brothers, Robbie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and though back then when he was just Aaron Johnson, and his brother Tom, played by Sean Borg, have just recently moved to town and are going to their school. The two girls immediately set their sights on both, and while Jazz is successful in naturally connecting with Tom, Georgia begins to naturally connect with Robbie, only while at the same time scheming to try to get him interested in her, although at the same time as that, she finds out he's involved with Lindsay. So, yeah, that's two things Lindsay's has or is going to have that she wants for herself, and she'll stop at nothing to get either. Will Georgia figure out a way to deal with that while she's dealing with other personal issues in her life? So, what stands out most about this movie is, just to say it's risque is an absolute understatement. Because this movie, you would be shocked at the things that are named in this film. You hear girls talking about things that they obviously would talk about amongst themselves, that they would never talk about in mixed company, or probably even with their parents either, because they'd be too embarrassed or because it's too personal. And yeah, this movie gets really personal. There are points where I felt kind of uncomfortable. I felt awkward thinking to myself, like, this. I feel like this is private. I shouldn't be privy to this. But at the same time, I think that because the two books that this movie was based on are written by a woman who probably went through these things when she was that age, yeah, it's very understandable and connects to that very well. Now, granted, and yeah, this movie does get pretty funny, and I can kind of understand that kids wouldn't exactly understand British humor. In fact, a lot of Americans don't understand British humor, I suppose. That's not a knock against British humor or against Americans who don't get it. It's just, well, it's a cultural thing that it's hard to be able to... Again, it's not a knock on either one. It's just a matter of your perspective and how what you expect when you see a certain kind of movie, and how different it can be when you get it from someone who has a very different way of worldview and look at things. But it's not something to trouble yourself against. It's something to mull over and try to process and try to be understanding about. It's very important to do that. But again, that's not the issue at hand. The issue here is, well, again, the movie has a lot to relate to with teenagers in general and what they go through. And it's not just simply the matter of a perspective of a teen girl. There's a bit in the film, one of the arcs she has in the film is that she's fearful of her parents splitting up because her father got a job in another country or another city, and he's away for a long period of time. And she at first is happy to not have both of her parents down her neck and is happy with the idea that and is afraid of the idea that her father will move them away, and thus she'll lose everything that connects her to her hometown. But then, at the same time, she's fearful of losing the relationship, watching her parents lose their relationship, and thus losing a large part of her life that she's doesn't wish to ever be without. I mean, for a child to fear the idea that their parents wouldn't stay together, yeah, it can be a rough thing to go through. I mean, as somebody who still has both their parents together, I can't exactly relate to it, but again, I'm impressed that this movie could ask that tough question, that this movie could deal with it in a serious way. Now, a lot of this does border on fantasy, I will certainly say, but at the same time, again, a teenage girl is going to have these fantasies, but at the same time, she's going to have these real thoughts, these real ideas, these real means of processing and thinking about how things should go in her life, and thinking about what the way things are going in her life, for better or worse. And yeah, the two actually blend together surprisingly well. There are points where you do feel the emotional pull of the reality that a teenager, be it a girl or not, could go through some challenging things, but at the same time, you get a sense of the fact that, yeah, sometimes they have the fantasies that can work out. Sometimes the fantasies don't always work out, and it's how they deal with them and how they go forward from there, that will be a means of trying to understand it and trying to determine if it was a fantasy worth having, if it was indeed what they really wanted. And yeah, I mean, you get points where you wonder if where she does some underhanded things to try to get what she wants, and you can still understand you can still realize where she's coming from and wonder is it that crazy or unrealistic a possibility that somebody could have done the exact same thing in her position, be it whether or not they knew it was right. And again, like I said, they make her very human. They make a lot of this very human, very relatable. So to the point that, yeah, the fact that these characters are British, the fact that this is a girl, doesn't matter, because a teen could relate to these. A teen could see something from their own life in her life, be it whether they're a boy or a girl. A teen could see something in their own life, whether they're American or British. So there is so much truth to this film, even with the sense of clearly being fiction set in there. And one of the things that I think stands out best to me in this film is probably the dynamic between Georgia Groome and Eleanor Tomlinson. They feel like real best friends in the way that they're constantly talking to each other about the most personal things, about how they always try to take each other's sides, and then how they always can't help but only see their own perspective and disregard the others because they feel so strongly about what's going on to the point that they're blinded by it. And yeah, it really is to the point that their heart is in the movie, and I genuinely did feel an emotional connection to that, and an emotional connection to the film because of that. Yeah, the fact that, again, Nickelodeon could have done... Now, well, Nickelodeon played it safe with how they marketed it. When it aired in when it actually did premiere in America, it was on TV instead of in theaters. But at the same time, and even then went straight to DVD after that. But then, again, the fact that they even made the movie in the first place, the fact that they took this daring risk, they took these decisions and decided to go with them, no matter how crazy it seemed at the time, no matter how uncertain they were as to whether or not they were doing the right thing. It is something that's worth commending. It's something that's worth giving attention to. So yeah, this isn't a movie, I think. So yeah, again, like I said, there is something to relate to. There is something to really cling on to this movie with, no matter what age you are. And yeah, I can completely understand being uncomfortable with how personal the movie gets with certain things, and how just they're not things that you would talk about. How a teenager, be it a boy or a girl, may not want to watch this movie with one of their parents because, yeah, to see these things and have to try to process them at the same time that you're sitting in the room with an adult, I mean, with your adult parent, I mean, wanting to ask, but at the same time being too embarrassed to, it's completely understandable. But again, I think this is a film that's worth checking out. It's not one I think you should tell to bug off anytime soon. For lack of a better phrase, this film is a bloody good time.